Now, over the last 5+ years of me being in the video editing industry, I have failed more job opportunity interviews than most people even had in the first place. And whether we are talking about an actual job interview or we are talking about more of a sales call where you're trying to get a client to sign up with you, it doesn't really matter. The most important thing is whenever you find yourself on a situation when you are on a call or a Zoom meeting with a potential prospect on the other side who could give you a job or who could become your client as a freelancer, there are a couple of things that you want to avoid doing which could cost you the job. And in the past, as I've said, I've lost countless amount of opportunities due to these mistakes. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing these mistakes with you so that you can make sure to avoid them and land the job or client of your dreams. So without any further ado, let's jump right into it. So the first mistake I've made over and over again is feeling just frightened on the call and acting lower value than the other person. Now, I hate this whole idea of being higher value or lower value because I think it's just super cringe in general, but there is something to it. You know, whenever you are in a social interaction with someone, there is usually kind of just like a hierarchy of people. And if you place yourself super below the other person that you are talking to, whether that's, an HR manager or the actual, CEO that you would maybe want to sign as a client, if you look up to them and you really put them on a pedestal, right? And you just like create this distance between you where it makes you feel all uncomfortable and shy because you think that they are this, bigger than life person. Well, what that's going to cause is, you will in general just feel a bit weird on the call. And also you will not dare to reveal your true personality and actually share who you are on the call, right? And people generally speaking don't really like that. They want you to feel like, you are kind of, even if not like on the same level as them, you still want to give them the respect, but they don't want to feel weird about you like really looking up to them or putting them up on a pedestal. So yeah, that's the first mistake that a lot of people make, and I've made as well myself. Whether you're talking to someone who's the CEO of a multi-million-dollar industry or just an HR person, speak to them like a regular human being. And I know it's easier to say than actually do, but you do have to get comfortable when it comes to speaking to people who are of very high status, because if you don't learn how to do that, well, then you will never become amazing at doing sales calls or interviews in general. The second mistake I've made in the past is having confusing pricing structures. Now, this is especially true when you're trying to sign a client, right, on a sales call. If you have a bunch of different ways you price your videos, sometimes you charge per minute, sometimes it's per video, you have like 10 different packages, it just becomes overwhelming to the client to the point where they are going to just tell you like, hey, just please send me over a Google document writing down all your different offerings and I'll get back to you. And the reality is they will never actually get back to you. So it's really important, in my opinion, to have a very straightforward and simple way of pricing your work and yourself. So that way, even when you are on the actual sales call or interview with the other person, they can gauge whether they think that's a rate that they want to work with or that they can work with or not. And you can actually, have them make a decision ideally on the call. And then if they have any objections, you can handle it there. If not, you can actually move forward. Now, the third mistake I've made in the past is not understanding the project well enough and the client's needs well enough before giving them a quote. So it's really important that you actually diagnose their situation, especially if you are on more like a client sales call. It's really important that you first understand exactly what their objectives are, what do they need to get to those objectives, how many videos do they need, what style of editing they need, right? And really just like genuinely just diagnose the situation, just like how a good doctor would diagnose a patient. Because if you don't do that, then it's going to come across really badly, right? It's going to look like you don't actually care about helping them solve the problem that they have. All you care about is just selling them, and in their eyes it's going to feel like they are just a number on a spreadsheet in your business, right? So what you want to do to avoid having this is you want to have on your sales call a phase which is called the discovery phase, where you're basically just asking them a bunch of questions, getting to understand their business as much as you can and as well as you can, and also what their needs are and what their wants are for this project. And only then, once you know exactly what they're looking for, what level of editing they need, how many of each type of videos, only then do you actually give them a quote. You don't just jump on the call and say like, yeah, these are my packages, what do you want, right? It's not the best way to do it. It's not the most professional way to go about it, unless the client, like specifically asks for it. But even then, I would suggest you to try to push them to do a bit more discovery so that you can actually find what would be the best package or deal for them. Now, the fourth mistake I've made in the past is not clarifying next steps after getting to the end of a sales call / interview, right? So if you do not not have clear steps of how you're going to be moving forward from there, then it's very unlikely that the prospect is actually going to come back to you and get started. It can happen, but more times than not, they are probably just going to disappear. So even if you couldn't take payment on the call or couldn't get, an agreement signed on the call for whatever reason, you still want to lay out what the next steps are going to be, whether you book follow-up call on which you will get started working together and you will onboard the client, or you will actually get started with the company for the next week, or whatever it is. You do want to try to lay out the next steps really clearly, and ideally try to get some sort of a commitment out of them as well, which actually brings us on to the next point. So getting commitment from the client is super important. This is the 5th point, and this is more so applicable if it's a sales call scenario, not necessarily on job interviews, because obviously there you're not really in control when it comes to that. But if it's a sales call, you want to get some sort of commitment out of them at the end of the call once you have come to agreement. The best thing is if you can actually take payment at the end of the call, and then after that potentially even get them to sign an agreement with you so that you can officially now consider them a client, because until somebody has paid you, they are not a client. I had that plenty of times when someone said, yes, let's do it, and then after that they disappear, even though they said that they would pay the invoice, right? So don't consider someone a client until they've actually paid, and try to get some sort of a commitment out of them. Now, if for whatever reason you cannot get them to pay you, you can try to get a deposit at least. So if they don't want to pay the full amount upfront or half of it upfront, try to get just a small deposit. The financial commitment is the best thing that you can do. After that, if you sign the agreement, that's still pretty strong. And if even those things don't work out, the next thing that you can do is you can schedule in a follow-up meeting to their calendar, ideally within like 72 hours of a window from the initial call. And then, that follow-up call, I really like to put it into the Google Calendar and actually invite them and get to confirm with them as well that they got the invite, because that way, if people have it in their calendar, they are a lot less likely to not show up for it and completely ghost you, because that would be pretty rude. Now, the 6th mistake I've made in the past is not creating an us versus them kind of scenario. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is most video editors that people have worked with in the past have some pretty serious weaknesses, like not being good with communication, not being on time, not being creative, whatever it is, or being bad at making changes to the videos. So what you want to do is you want to actually ask them about the negative experiences that they maybe had with some other agencies or video editors in the past. Even if it's a job interview, right? You can ask them like, what were the main problems that you've had with previous people on this role, right? What were the biggest struggles, right? And if you really understand that situation, and maybe you even point out in real life before they would tell you what the problems were, you kind of like predict their problems on the actual meeting. Well, what that's going to do is it will make them trust you a lot more. Okay, so they are going to be like, wow, if this guy or this girl knows that these were the exact same things that we were struggling with the previous candidate for the job, then they're just going to assume that you are not going to be making the same mistakes, and you are a lot more likely to get hired. So whenever you can, you want to try to create you versus them or us versus them scenario, which will really just highlight how you are going to be different from every other applicant and candidate, and how your character traits and how your overall, persona is superior to the competition. And then the 7th mistake I've made in the past, and I see people do all the time, is not building out a strong portfolio of actually relevant pieces of content to the type of job or the type of client that you are trying to get. Now, even if you just have, 4 or 3 pieces of edits, and let's say you're trying to apply for a long form position, that's going to make a huge difference, because they will be able to see like in real life, how are your skills, what can they expect from you. So if you're trying to get clients without having some sort of a portfolio that people could look at and see what they can expect if they work with you, you are absolutely shooting yourself in the foot. So I would highly encourage you against that. Now, I really hope you enjoyed this video and you found these insightful. If you want to keep learning from me and you want to join a community where you can learn more about how to become a better editor and content creator, how to grow on these platforms, how to monetize on these platforms, and just in general make this your profession, then you can check out the first link in the description below, where you will be able to learn more about our inner circle community. And other than that, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you will be able to use these tips in your next sales call or job opportunity, and I will see you guys in the next video.